Welcome to Bounce, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of product teams, the challenges they face, and the incredible stories of resilience that emerge. I'm Molly Cox, your co-host, a product designer with a knack for navigating through the storms of creativity.
And I'm your co-host, Claire Flowers, a product manager who's seen it all. The highs, the lows, and everything in between.
Each week we'll bring you tales of product traumas, those moments that test our limits, they push our boundaries, and sometimes bring us to our knees.
We're talking about career flops and follies and those pivotal moments when everything seems to fall apart.
But as we know, the harder you fall, the higher you bounce. We'll explore with our guests their toughest challenges,
The actions they took to overcome them.
and how these experiences have shaped their careers and continue to impact them today.
So join us in this journey of resilience, growth, and bouncing back stronger than ever. All right, welcome to Bounce. I'm your co-host, Claire Flowers.
And I'm your co-host, Molly Cox.
And we are super excited for our guest today. Today we have Kelsey Nichols. She is the CTO at Landing. Landing is a membership-based network of furnished apartments. And I'm really excited to talk to Kelsey today because oftentimes I hear that it's really hard to break into product as a profession. For me personally, I took a roundabout way of landing into product. And I hear often from a lot of people that it can often be really hard to break in. So Kelsey has a very diverse background. So I'm really interested to hear about your experience and how you got into product. Kelsey, tell us about it.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's my turn. Long time listener, first time caller. I actually started my career in education. And more specifically, I taught ESL and then was teaching PE at the end. So my journey really went PE to engineering to product back to engineering again. And it's funny, I'm coaching, just not middle school recess or sports anymore. So my background is that I studied language in college and I studied education. I love teaching and I love learning, and that's just kind of the root of it. When I got to a certain point where I had surpassed like the master's level and was moving into the doctorate, because it's just what you do in education, and I realized I wasn't quite fulfilled. When I found out about this thing called coding, I think that my understanding was it was a language for computers, and I liked it because it let me exercise a different part of my brain that was kind of still hungry for while I was teaching. And then it was universal. And I think that was something that was really I could work with developers in other countries, and we could speak the same language. It was like a universal language, which is kind of like somebody who's interested in language's dream. So I went down that path, went through coding boot camp sort of as a TA. It's actually where I met Claire, sort of in that background, and then ended up with my first engineering job at Shipt grocery delivery, where I worked on a web application prior to a Target acquisition in 2017. And then, do you want my how I ended up at Landing or how I ended up in product?
Yeah, tell us all of it. We want to hear the whole thing. Yeah, starting out as an engineer, trying to master that. So how did you transition from being an engineer to making it into product?
Yeah, so actually, my journey into engineering was really funny to look back on. Because I was terrified from day one that I had tricked everyone into getting the job and that I didn't know how to do the job. And I truly did not know how to do the job. But very early on, I built relationships with a lot of the engineers that were Shipt, and they were more than happy to mentor me. And those were all great there. So after my time at Shipt had ended, I had moved out to San Francisco from Birmingham, Alabama. And I was thinking, should I try to run with the big dogs, play in the biggest, the Google, the Facebook, am I good enough for those things? But the reality is I wasn't interested in that level of I like startups. And I interviewed and I got some offers, and I think that was good enough for me. But I had actually taken a role at another smaller startup company before Bill Smith stepped down from Shipt and said, hey, do you want to come work for me? And I figured he already knew what he was going to do, but he didn't. He just sent me an email and was like, if you're interested, let me know. And I still have the response to him, which was, okay, let's try it. Or like, LFG, like I'll give it a go because what do I have to lose? I had never been a founding engineer before, but started there. And so then it was really tough because I had to build everything for the first time from scratch. And that's much different than stepping into ecosystems of software that already have patterns that have been established that you can repeat. When you have to figure out the answer the first time on your own, much more difficult. But my attitude has and still kind of is always like, yes, and then I'll figure it out. He wanted me to build a mobile app within like 2 weeks of me starting, and I was like, no problem. And then I left and I cried. And then I did build the mobile app, and it's actually still in use today by a lot of different people. So product was not much different. Like in that same, like I didn't really know what I was getting into. I worked through engineering for 2 years, 2.5 years at Landing, had seen two different product leaders come through, two CPOs, very different skill sets, both leading small product departments and both trying to break open a space for product at Landing. Because when Landing started, it was engineering and business, and product hadn't been from the get-go, which is something I'll probably touch on later as well. I think it's important, the route that I took. So I worked as engineer and I was a partner to our product teams. Neither of those worked out like for Landing or for those people, and they ended up leaving. And I want to say October of like 2023, so 2022. I got asked, you've been doing product. That's what they said to me. You've been doing product, because I had been kind of directing engineering in this space where I would sit down, identify the problem that we were trying to solve, whether it's from the consumer or from the business. I had kind of three variables I always put things in. I would say is what's most important: speed, scope, or quality. And you only get two. And I kind of that's the stage, the size we were at. And then I would put together a tiger team, work with a designer. Like I was doing product, I just didn't know it because I was also doing the technical implementation at the time. So when they said, is product an area, I realized that what that meant for me at Landing was that at a table of business leaders and like stakeholders, I was the one that needed to represent the consumer. And that was a piece that was missing to like our leadership puzzle, is we had somebody to think about finance. We had somebody to think about operations. We had somebody to think about revenue, but there was nobody there that was like the voice of the customer. And that was product's role at the time at Landing. So I said yes, and I took product team, who is much more senior and experienced than me in the like harder skill of product, and it was a really fun year, and I learned a lot. I guess. Do you want me? I went and I built. I'm a CTO now.
yeah.
So now I'm a CTO.
So obviously it worked out to you. Have you found that? The first person building the mobile app, the product person, the designer, the engineer, have you found that really made you have a deep understanding for the consumer, more so than maybe some other team members who came after you, because some of those things had already been kind of figured out?
Actually, no, I kind of did this backwards. So I think that what it did give me was skill sets that my product partners were better at. I was not good at consumer research, market insights, data-driven development. I was not doing like the upfront work, because at the point in time, but it was given to me, it was like over the wall. The decision had already been made. We were going to build this thing. We were testing. I need you to figure out how to get it done. So in my engineering role, a lot of it was the how. And when I shift to product, it was the why. What it did help though is like I realized, I can learn how to talk to users. I can learn how to like be in a seat of empathy or go through this experience and think about it from the consumer's point of view. That was like easier than learning how to build it, actually.
So in this process, from you're an engineer, you have these professional product managers who are coming in and they're adding into this skill set. And so you're continuing along your engineering journey. So was there an event that happened that kind of catapulted you more into solving for the why as opposed to the how?
Yes. So constraints can be really good things. And our biggest constraint was people and time. And I think that's probably most of the challenge for any startup, right? Is like they'll use this word resource, which actually means one of three things: time, money, or people. And we were resource constrained. And because of that, I needed to make sure that the places we were going to put our effort were the whys became really important, a lot more important, right? Because we could build anything. We had a great engineering team, we had a great design team. Anything could be built, but should it be built? And that was the question. And it was a forcing function, because I said, hey, we don't have unlimited time. We don't have unlimited resources. We have to make decisions. And so to get to the starting line of like what should I build, when, and why, you have to make that decision, I guess.
So in the beginning, before you made this transition into product, you're an engineer, you're on the engineering team. What are some areas that you saw that maybe some other product leaders maybe missed on, or just totally missed the mark?
Mm. Yeah, I've been actually thinking about this a lot, because not every company does product the same. Like engineering kind of looks the same at most companies, right? What you're building might change, but like it's kind of a little more clear cut, where product can be expected to do a lot of different things or be a lot of different things. So from the engineering side and like the relationship with product, for me, like one of the initial things I realized was they kind of made product not so successful at landing in the first like two iterations, was a certain resistance to change. Um, and not just on product's part. So I think that what I recognized is that for the product department to truly succeed, if it does not start from the beginning, that it has to have a supportive, or like an adaptable, like supportive business leaders and adaptable people who are adaptable to the integration of the department as a whole, or it's going to struggle to have any impact. And I think that like before hiring a product leader, if you don't have one, like you start with an engineer and a business idea, right? And you just kind of, or you free go off that, and then it gets to a point where you're like, I think I need product. You probably need to think about what that means to you, because you need to support it, and you need to give it the right resource. You need the right time, resource, love, and attention and care, just like you do any other business function, to make it successful. So I think from the beginning, we didn't necessarily establish clear objectives, or like what the business needed from product. And I think that you start out with like that should be the person you hire, because that's what you're looking for, and then that's the team you build. And that right there is just what builds good integration with other departments, and puts you in a win-win situation. Like product set up to succeed, the people are set up to succeed, and then the consumer and the business are set up to succeed as well. But it comes from that like initial support.
So did you find that, so with the integration of or growing a new product team, that it sounds to me like maybe that it started out a little bit on an island, and so then the integration of that there was some friction. Like can you think about where, or like some common friction points that would have, that was maybe it's from the engineering to product, misalignment on goals? Are there any what's the word I'm looking for? Are there any patterns that you recognize there?
Yeah, I think maybe the solution for product is not the same at every company. And sometimes I think we have this tendency to like have a one size fits all approach to like, are you agile? Are you scrum? Are you like waterfall? What are these like methodologies? And we only have these. I think maybe it was a benefit that I didn't like study product or know product in these terms, because I just found ways that work for moving things along and figuring out problems, and I didn't have names for the things. And then later on somebody would say, oh, you're doing this. um so I considered it like bottom up growth for my team. I didn't go like, we're going to do this and everybody's going to get in line and we're going to follow this process. I went the reverse way, because I'd seen the other way where we tried to say, we're going to do this and this is how it's going to work. And I don't think you can make that like, I think you have to learn the individuals, the teams, and the business before deciding what process and what things like product things work well for the business. I actually thought about it today. I was thinking that my approach to building a product department is not that different from my approach to building a product. It's like meta in a way. Because if you there's these things you do when you are getting ready to build a new feature or an app or whatever it is. You do some like market research and insight, right? I had 3 years of market research and insight at Landing where I saw how the business worked. I understood the business, and I like treating Landing as if it was a product, right? That needed to be helped. So I was like, I understand the players, what they need, what their goals are, kind of their strategies and objectives. So it was like, I did that. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to do some sort of light alignment, understand it. Now that I understand these things, there's like a product lifecycle management, cross-functional collaboration, like customer focus. I was doing the things that were for products when you think of a feature on a phone, but I was doing it for the human beings and the organization at Landing as a whole. So then you move into like, there's got to be a feedback loop. There's got to be some scalability, like all of those things you think about on a digital product. You can maybe apply the same methodology and find a solution that works well for your company. And that's kind of what I did. And I didn't force one.
How was the response? Go, Molly.
Well, the response was good. It's tough. Like, I was really worried at first. I had questions about whether or not product would ever be successful. Like, some companies don't have a standalone product department, right? They do product as a function of engineering or as of marketing. And I was unsure, is product like a long-standing area that Landing will have? And I was a little nervous, like seeing 2 leaders that came before me and didn't stay. Like, am I just hopping in line for that next thing, for this not to work out? I love it here and I like working here. And I was a little worried, like, what if I have to go back to engineering because this doesn't work out? But I think it took, because I had already built the trust, I already had like the trust of and the respect of people at the company. They did what I said at the beginning of this, which was like, I had the support of getting the help I need to build the department and to get all of R&D in a rhythm and being able to deliver things. So I think
But
the
not
response
only
was
did you have
positive.
the trust, right, of the whole team behind you, but you said there were 2 product leaders there before you. So you had experience seeing what they had done and working directly with them. So you had the opportunity to maybe see where marks had been missed, correct? So walking into the role, what do you think, just in general, whether it be there or Shipped or the other places, where have you seen product leaders miss the mark and why?
We let's see. I guess I might be a good time, but to introduce this thing I came across yesterday called survivorship bias, right? And I never thought of it as like looking. Well, the concept is that your data set is only the survivors of whatever it is, so you don't take failure into account, and it only gives you half the picture. And it's like a theory they use in business and like investment funds, but also I think the idea came from like World War II plane development. And it's like, if you brought a plane back from war, you wouldn't look at the wings and say, oh, it's been hit here. Here's where we need to reinforce. The ones that made it back are actually the ones you don't need to fix. It's the ones that didn't make it back. You need to like go out there and do some research on the planes that went down to find out why, right? And so the idea is that if you're only looking at success, that's only half the picture. And because I actually hadn't even seen success. I think I had half the picture, but it wasn't working. So I had to pull from that. I think that like the main areas are like probably for me were specific to Landing, and I think it was lack of clear objectives. I think it was lack of support. I think it was the one size fits all solution. And really like a shift in attitude. I'm a show me, not a tell me. And I think that people who come from larger organizations or have been in product a long time, we can say a lot of things. We can talk a lot of strategy. We can like have a lot of ideas, but I think the execution is really all that matters. And I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. And it kind of just earns that space for you. That answers your question. I don't know. It's hard to talk about how they like missed it. I mean, there's missteps, but I do.
I think sometimes we get nervous, right? When we you just have such an interesting, you go from engineering into product, and then this trepidation that am I gonna be able to do in product what I did in engineering? But I think we discount how much we absorb from things that other people do, whether they are right or wrong. And so given how much experience you do or do not have, you tend to look at some of those things other people have done and are able to, without really knowing you're doing it, bypass those things. Like, and it sounds like to me you were able to do that very naturally, and some other people maybe aren't so natural in that, but you kind of had the natural ability to do that. So you were able to take what they had done and almost implement that into your leadership style, and kind of turn it around, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're able to realign the product team and almost align engineering to product in a way that hadn't been done before.
Yes. It took
Correct.
time. It took time. Like it. Yeah, I think. What's important to stress, and like, I mean, failure or like mishap. Well, I don't know. There's other synonyms: flops, mishaps, setbacks. All of
I'll pull
those
up a
things
thesaurus. Hold on. Let me.
are they're emotionally challenging. So I think that you naturally want to avoid them, and you actually don't want to look back at them. I think it's impossible to say you have a culture of continuous improvement or of learning or an app that's continuing to be iterated if failure is not an integral part of the process, because that's a part of learning. It just is how you learn, is you do the wrong thing and then you correct it and then you do it again, you correct it. But in order to failing a bunch requires much longer time. So you can accelerate your learning when you look at the failures of others. You can like achieve learning outcomes in a shorter period of time, because it's kind of, you don't have to experience every mistake firsthand to like understand consequences and or corrective actions. You can just say, I saw that person do that. That did not work. I'm going to try a different way. So it like can accelerate your learning. Like when you look at other people, I mean, there's benefits of that. You accelerate your learning by looking at mistakes that you may not want to repeat. There's an element of risk management that's like a little bit different than, I guess, the accelerated learning of like the right way to do things. You also know what to look out for, because you don't know what you don't know. And so there's like insights in that. I think that an overlooked part of failure, and yours or somebody else's, is what I consider creativity or enhancing your problem solving skills. Like, it didn't work this way, so I've got to try it another way. It didn't work that way, so I have to try it another way. And that's you should probably give it 3 good tries before you don't try it again. So I'm the third, and I stuck it out. And that's, I mean, that's got my plaque for the longest standing product leader from my
Read that
engineering
to us,
school.
Kelsey. Read that.
And you're an engineer.
Yeah, I mean, it's old, but at the time it was when I hit 7 months of service for recognition, and in my outstanding dedication and leadership as the longest serving VP product. So like in good jest, they gave this to me, and the product managers that I worked with were awesome, and they were also a part of that. But it was really more just of they were really excited that I created like a safe space for product development. Happy, healthy, like not a feature factory, times for us to think and explore and create and mess up and try again. And I think that was like the intention behind that, made it long enough to get to those things.
Yeah, I think that the concept of survivorship bias is very interesting, because there's so many loud voices out there, especially in leadership roles, and all of they are talking about is all of these, I achieved this success by doing these things. And it's really hard to not have that not compare yourself to that, because you're only seeing half the picture.
Mhm.
And I think that you said something earlier about success is only half the picture, and failure really needs to be incorporated because that's the only way that you really grow.
Yeah.
Um,
It's probably actually like 80-20 failure to success. Like realist. I don't that's an average I made up. But, in my experience, I mess up way more than I get it right. You just got to like make sure you get the important things right.
have you ever experienced anyone in leadership saying, "Well, we did it this way. Let's just go do that over and over and over again," because that'll definitely work. It worked that last time.
No. Because it's so
Lucky.
rare that like it's so
It's
rare
so
to
rare that it works.
yeah, and it's not just it's like that's what the point I mean, gosh, like I think I could answer your question too about like missing the mark. Maybe something that I did that other leaders didn't do, and this is where my technical experience helped me, is I understood how like easy or hard something was. So I didn't have a ton of resistance. If somebody brought an idea, honestly, saying no was not the right thing. And I was doing that early on. I was just like, no, we don't have time. It's not a priority. But the issue with that is that doesn't help anyone understand, and the problem's going to repeat itself. So what I figured out after saying no so many times that people just saw me as the CP no, that that's not beneficial. My job is actually to just ask why first, and to explain to them like why I don't think that. And it was more than just opinion, but like usually what it led to is I'm going to present some data and research around this thing, or I need you to, because I actually don't have the bandwidth to go and do this, but I would love for you to. So, like, kind of making mini PMs or like a product way of thinking, even with the business. I don't need them to bring me an idea and I'll go figure out if it's going to work. I want you to go think about it in the ways that I'm going to think about it, but you go do that. And it's like a teaching mechanism to like set little PMs all over the place. And then I typically what's the word I would be like, let's just test it, let's pilot it, what is the lowest level thing. And I think because my engineering background is very easy, I could say here's the scooter, here's the Kia, and here's the Ferrari, like every time, of the three ways that you could do these things that can get you from point A to point B, but they're very different vehicles. And I just what's the there's a right time to build the right thing. So I probably took more risks. I was just like, yeah, we'll build it, we'll try it. I could do that in a spreadsheet or a CSV uploader or whatever the thing is by the end of the day and tell you if it's going to work. And it gave us like either let us mess up a lot faster or validate a lot faster. So my other product leaders just said no.
So, and that's a very interesting topic, because I think I actually said to someone the other day, like, more, I hate that I said it, even having this discussion with you. I said more of a product manager's job is to say no than it is to say yes. And now I'm just like shook by that I said that to somebody.
Okay.
But it's a
Well,
fine line. It's a very fine line, because I do find myself saying no to more than I do say yes. So I think that I want you to like say more about that.
mm, there's a couple different ways. I mean, like, it depends why you're saying no. I think that the danger in it is like, at least what I found, you start to use the term prioritize, which the business grows to hate because they're getting in line and nothing is a priority. And if everything's a priority, nothing's like this prioritization, fiercely prioritize, all of that stuff. It really just comes from, you can say like yes, no, or maybe later, those are like your options, and that's how the priority works. But a couple ways I handled it. I'll say this. When somebody has an idea for a thing, um, my initial response I've tried to make really canned and great, almost to a laughing point, where I just say, well, what is the problem you're trying to solve? I almost always respond in this way, because that's really, let's just start there. Like, don't come to me with a solution. Is like, tell me the problem. But the funny thing about that is I've usually found that that's not even the problem. They will tell me one problem, but if I ask why, maybe 2, 3, 4 more times, there's a whole different problem. Um, so a couple of ways that I handle it are like, I knew that I couldn't do everything myself, and I think I saw a lot of product leaders try to put themselves like to be the dam in a river that is going. It's like deep and wide, and they were going to stop it and realign strategy and move the whole company in one direction around this thing. And like, the river is powerful, so your best option is to channel it in the direction you want it to go and not try to stop it. So what I would do is have a discussion, usually put some time. They say, I have this idea, I want to talk to you about it. If it started with an open conversation and I'm thinking in my head, there's no way this isn't a good idea, I would talk to him about like, what are they trying to solve, give them some options. Then like, there's creative tactics again you can use. I thought about it like when I used to teach and a kid would do something, I'd say, go think of 3 different ways to do this and come back to me. Sometimes I would send them back and I'd say, you thought of this way, but like, what are 3 other ways you could solve this problem? Let's come back and let's look at those problems. So it like did a little homework for me to help me understand their business more, because I didn't have the space or time to go sit with them and do true customer research, like be on the phones, listen to their calls. I'm trying to get them to help me do the customer research. So go think of 3 different ways. I want you to come back with 4 different examples. Why don't you go and tell me what you think the projected impact? So I was like kind of teaching them to build their own PRD or their own case to build the product, instead of it being like, but with my guidance. So it helped the case of like somebody building a PRD that doesn't make sense or whatever you call it, it's your company. So yeah, I think there's just like creative strategies. And sometimes I would say, okay, well, let's talk through the green light path, because what you're saying on paper sounds awesome. So let's go through every way this is green. Okay, now what happens if, let's do the red light path. And honestly, sometimes it would just circle them back to saying no to themselves. They end up answering they would answer their own question. So I was like, all right, well, that was a great discussion, and I'm glad we talked about that. And you can keep going about your day. It just takes a little more.
That's like when you want your parents to like, you give them you let them figure out to say no, right? Or to say yes. Yeah. It's funny you said earlier actually, like, managing product wasn't so different as managing engineers. Well, how different was it from managing students? You just kind of brought that up a little bit. How is the classroom with a bunch of elementary, middle, high school students different than a product team or an engineering team?
Sometimes not so different, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, but it's kids are sometimes way easier than adults, but it's all teaching. Like, I don't know. I think that's what I've recognized. Like, I had to teach myself engineering. Learning to learn is the only thing you can do. I had to learn in school, and then I had to by learning to teach, you also learn different ways. By learning different ways to teach, you learn different ways to learn, right? There's like just different strategies. Like, if you say something to me and you say it wrong, I have a couple of options as the teacher. I can stop you, like cut you off, and correct you right then, which creates a certain sort of like fear on your part to like maybe try that again because of how you received it. There's like different things you can do, something called recasting, which is what I do in product, where I will repeat the idea back to you correctly, and I'm like, I'm guiding you in that way. And I just think it's like, product is kind of teaching, engineering is teaching. It's just like, if learning to learn, it's all related to each other, but you try one way, and if it doesn't work, you try it again. And it's also the other layer of this 3D chess puzzle is that humans aren't all the same. So the way that I talk to Claire about her product ideas is not going to be the same way I talk to you about yours, even, as a designer. So it's a lot of work to like build the relationships, to understand the communication, to have like constructive, forward-thinking dialogue about whatever it is you're trying to do in the business.
So do you ever sleep?
Actually, more than most. That's like usually my coping mechanism. I don't really watch TV. I just go straight to bed. So.
Well, if you had any for anyone who is looking to get into product or really wanting to make a leap from another profession and they really want to jump into product, maybe in engineering, what advice would you give to them? Don't do it.
Gosh. Yeah, I think about that. If I had known how hard this was going to be, I might have had a second thought, and I probably still would have done it because I'm incredibly hard-headed. But no, my advice for product would be, for whatever role you're stepping into, understand the business, but focus on the customer, because those two lenses have to be a Venn diagram, or like they have to be on top of each other, and you have to see through them, because you can't focus on the customer and not understand your business and your business goals. Those are incredibly important. Like, it doesn't matter if it makes it's an awesome business when the Venn diagram is a complete circle, where everything that makes the customer happy is good for the business. But those are a tension point for many companies. So your decision making, you don't have all the pieces there if you don't truly understand your business, how you make money, what your CAC is, what your LTV is, what is it trying to be, like these objectives, but at the same time, then put the customer lens on top of it or something. But if I'd said that to myself a year ago, I would say, I don't even know what that means. Thank you.
Thank you.
But
So
you-
now, so so you started engineer, moved to product, and now you're CTO. So you moved right on out of product. You got your plaque and you were like, deuces, I was the longest standing. So I'm going to move right back into engineering now. What do you gravitate towards most, and what do you most enjoy about what you're doing today?
I'm going to give you the cheesiest, like, canned answer, but it's solving problems. And they're all just abstractions of like, you, me, and Claire on this call. Like, Claire is traditional PM, I am a traditional engineer, and you are a traditional designer. We're all solving problems with a different skill set. So my like I just that's what I like at the end of the day, is like, I mean, and I want to solve all of them, but I can't. I have to pick the most important ones. The transition, quote, back to engineering, product is under me. Like, we are a family of product design and engineering. We all operate together in a small, tight knit team. But yeah, it's like, I work with really smart people who are more than capable of one role. Like, even with my engineers now, because of the product team size, we can't go, like I said, and do customer research. So you know what my engineers do? I say, hey, you need to go over there. You're working on our payment system. You need to go sit with billing for like a day or two or three. And most engineers aren't accustomed to this. Like, this is not a thing I don't think people do. Engineering would not go and listen to their calls, or like watch how they are working in the admin system you're built, and tell me you would like to do that job for a day. They will come back and say, oh my goodness, I can fix that. I can fix this. And they come back with all these ideas of ways that they can improve the product. And they love doing that. Like, they want to make people happy. And that's the same thing for me. It's like, it's just on a different level, whether it's like for the people on the phones, for the people in the field, or for the like top level leadership.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I think that for those looking to get into product, do so hastily. But I love what I do. I can, listening to you talk, I know that you're super passionate about it. So thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I was really hoping. I had planned in my head, I was like, they're going to ask me about a time I failed. And I thought about it all day.
Do you want to get
Yeah,
into
tell
it?
us about a time
Yeah,
you failed. What is your failure?
You can cut it out if you don't want it, but it's not even an important one. I sat down, like, I have a whole
Hold on before you go into it. Molly, I think you should say, so Kelsey, tell us about a time that you've failed.
Okay, you want me to tee it up?
Yeah, tee it up.
All right. So Kelsey, tell us about a time that you have failed.
I write them down. Actually, I have a
failure journal. Is that what?
Yeah, but I'm sorry. We'll talk at business. I don't want to go into interpersonal or communicate. Like, I've failed in a lot of departments, but let's focus on engineering for this moment, because I thought about this story today and it was really funny to me. So we keep an incidents log internally for us, and it's our way of like, our own disaster recovery plan. If something goes wrong, we tip over prod, whatever the thing is, we can fix it fast, ask questions late, act now, ask later, look back on it, don't let it happen again. But the best story I think recently I could think of was, we have a bunch of subleases that members sign, and these are legal documents that go to court in case of X, Y, or Z, because they're living in apartment homes. So they sign subleases. An important thing not to mess up. So we changed the language across a member agreement and across a sublease. And I had a guy set it up. And the way that we did it was we had a like WYSIWYG in our admin system where you could see the text, but we actually had to run a job as a test in production to populate the information. So as a developer does, he decided to run a maintenance worker, what he thought was in staging, but it was in a production environment, where it replaced all the words on the sublease with the word farts in all caps. And he ran it in production and none of us knew it because it didn't like go through code review. So a couple days later, I get a message from our legal team letting me know that our subleases say farts in all caps in several of the blanks, and members were signing these. And now I'm thinking about this. I don't even know you can air this, but I thought about this story today and it was incredible. And so then like his follow-up PR was like, remove farts from the subleases, and it's still in there, and it's still one of the funniest things that I mean, he handled it so well. But we've all been there where like you get so frustrated with code that you're like, you just start typing whatever it is to see if it's going to do it. And like, I think he got to that point and it just went right on through to production. Luckily corrected it and the members were good with it and they re-signed the appropriate legal documents, but can happen to the best of us.
Reminds me of a story. One of my friend's sons, who is in first grade, talked his whole class into writing "but" into his all of their Valentine's cards for their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So again, first grade class, not so different.
Yeah, this was a 30-year-old man.
Yeah, but let's be honest, farts are funny, right? Like that's just.
Farts in all caps on your sublease agreement for the apartment you're living in are not so funny.
Well, which goes to show that's actually like a nice little A/B test right there. Like how many people are actually reading their
you know, I bet if I went and read my lease agreement, it could say farts in it. And
it probably says farts 18 times in there.
I'm not reading that. So, yeah, I can give you a more serious anecdote, but man, I really wanted to tell that story.
That is amazing. I'm not so sure that counts as a failure. To me, that was a huge success.
That is a big win in my book. Like as a designer, that is a design win as well.
Yeah. Amazing.
Awesome. All right. Well, Kelsey, very much appreciate you coming on with us today. Yeah, we've learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys. Well, hope you have the content and that it wasn't a whole lot of nothing.
It was not. Really
well, I tried it really hard. I've been focusing really hard on actually answering questions because I realized I just can't do it.
You did great.
Great. Okay.
You did awesome. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you'd like to connect with us, check out our website at bouncepodcast.com.